Dr. Collins. It is, first of all, it's an exciting 24 hours to know that it feels like the closest we've come to being able to declare some sort of end here. But I got to ask, in the last couple of weeks, under whether it was questioning on Capitol Hill, questioning by the media, the CDC and a lot of the public health officials seemed to be pretty sure that we were going to be in this some form of a mask requirement much longer. What changed, and how did it change so quickly?
I think, well, first of all, you started off calling this a shockwave. Isn't it nice we have a shockwave that's good news? Let's just take a moment here and go, hooray for that.
Oh,
But,
yes.
Okay, so how did things change? Well, some of it is new data that's arriving. The efficacy of the vaccines, which we knew was really high, 94, 95% in carefully controlled clinical trials. You always wonder, well, what happens when you get out in the real world? And guess what? It's 94 to 95%. These vaccines are incredibly effective. So people who are fully vaccinated, like me, really are now in a position where you can be in various circumstances and not worry nearly as much as you did before. I think also there's more data that people who are vaccinated are less likely to be carrying the virus without knowing it themselves and therefore potentially posing a risk to others. That risk seems to have gone down. So putting that all together, looking at what's happened in Israel, which is maybe a couple of months ahead of us in terms of their vaccination rate, and seeing that they have relaxed all of these stipulations and seem to be doing fine, although there's other horrible things happening in Israel. It does give you confidence that the time is now to ease up on this. You know, CDC has a tough time with this. Let's give them a break. If they make a mistake, and I'm sure some people think maybe they just did, of getting a little too relaxed, and then we have an outbreak and there has to be like going back to masks again. There are going to be a lot of mad people. But come on, I think it's time to take that chance, as they have now done, and to see if all of us can get a little closer back to normal life. I got to tell you a funny story. I have a trainer that I work out with twice a week. And today, for the first time, he took off his mask, as I did, because we're immunized. And I realized the guy had braces put on 12 months ago. I never saw his face. I didn't know that. There's going to be a lot of discoveries happening here.
No, there is. But you just actually anticipated, and I'd like you to follow up a little bit more on a potential question. Look, you sort of hinted, hey, you never know. The CDC may have to rescind this leniency because of a spike. And what would you be looking for, or what would they be looking for where they would think, oh, you know what, maybe we lifted this too soon? Is it a spike? Is it a move in the number of cases in vaccinated places? I mean, is there a specific metric you'd be looking at that would say, ooh, maybe we did this too quick?
Well, I don't think they'd change the opportunity now for fully vaccinated people to go around outside without masks. That's not really going to change. I think the edge of this is what happens indoors with crowded spaces, which already, if it's really crowded, you're still encouraged to wear your mask, but less crowded spaces. If it looks as if in certain communities the virus is coming back, or if there's a new variant that seems particularly contagious, then we may need to adjust that. Part of CDC's problem, of course, is they have to make recommendations for the whole country. And the situation in different parts of the country is very different, as you just heard about that report from Alabama. Whereas you look at Maine, for instance, where the vaccination rates are very high, it doesn't seem quite like that's the same thing. But they have to somehow come up with an average. Now, let's be clear. CDC put out their recommendations, but they made it very clear that state and local jurisdictions may have different views, and you should listen to those. And businesses may have different views about whether it's safe to be indoors. And certainly hospitals and correctional facilities and nursing homes and travel on planes and buses and trains. This is not a total moment to take your mask off in all those spaces. So follow those guidelines.
Look, this guidance almost seems to encourage the private sector to come up with a vaccine mandate, right? Because you have to come up with some. If the rule is fully vaccinated people can go without masks, well, then the next inevitable question is, how do we check to see if somebody's vaccinated? Well, we have these vaccine cards, and different companies. We know cruise lines are doing this, and others are doing this. Is that what you're hoping happens here? that essentially the private sector becomes the enforcer?
Well, I don't know about hoping. I think the private sector is pretty smart, and they'll figure out in their given situations what makes sense. I can assure you again, the federal government is not going to be issuing vaccine passports. That's been made very clear. But private concerns have the opportunity to do so. Universities, of course, many of them have already declared if you're going to live on campus, you need to be vaccinated. There is some legal issue about this because the vaccines have not yet had final approval. They're under emergency use authorization. We'll have to see how those legal battles play out. But I think every business owner, every university president is going to have to figure out what makes the most sense to keep their workers safe, get their economy going again, and then make that judgment.
There was no guidance given, or at least it wasn't obvious guidance given to parents of unvaccinated. I'm in a household of 2 fully vaccinated people, 1 almost fully vaccinated teenager, and 1 who's not yet vaccinated. And I imagine I'm not the only person with children under 18 at home that way. What is the guidance if you have a child under 12, where you don't have an opportunity to get vaccinated?
Yeah, I think if you dig down into the deeper pages of CDC, they address that. I'm not sure it gives you a precise answer. A lot of it has to do with what is the risk in your community that underage child is potentially going to be infected and going to spread it. But if you and the rest of the family are vaccinated, your chance of catching that is now so low that I would say the chances are really low, and you should not have to worry about that case. Now, on the other hand, that child who's not vaccinated may still need to wear a mask when they go to school if there's still community spread in order to be in order not be part of that next outbreak.
What are you going to do when it comes to wearing a mask? How often do you expect to wear one, and where would you do it?
I am looking forward to new opportunities to go to the grocery store and not wear a mask because I've been pretty faithful about that. I think I mentioned this morning being able to do a workout with my wife and with this trainer with all of our masks off. That hasn't happened before. When it comes to going to work at NIH, we're still a federal facility. We're trying to figure out whether the federal mandate for mask wearing has now been abolished by this finding. We don't quite know that yet. And otherwise, people are a little confused by this. Let me give a recommendation. If you go to the Google and just do CDC choosing safer activities, there is a very helpful sort of visual that looks like this about when you can wear a mask and when you don't have to. One side of this side is people who've immunized, a lot of green there. This is the side for people who aren't yet immunized, who still need to wear masks and for whom there are dangerous settings. By the way, we need to be really clear about that, Chuck. Everybody's going, we don't have to wear masks anymore. That applies to fully immunized people. If you're not immunized, you are still a risk to yourself and to others, and things still need to be pretty faithful as far as mask wearing. And I hope that came across, and maybe it's even an incentive for people who've been, I'll get around to it. Okay, it's time to stop getting around to it and actually do so. Right. And if you're wondering where to get vaccinated, 438-829, text that on your phone, punch in your zip code, and you'll get answers.
Yeah, look, carrots and sticks, lotteries in Ohio, vaccine mandates, whatever it takes. Let's get more people vaccinated. Dr. Francis Collins.
Shots and beer in New Jersey, whatever it is. Yeah.
There you go. I take it if it entices people to get the vaccine, you're for it. Anyway, Dr. Collins.
And we need it.
Thanks for bringing your optimism as well to the show. It's always a pleasure to get that.
It's a good day for optimism. And we didn't even talk about the fact that adolescents can get now safely immunized as well. And my 14-year-old granddaughter is getting her shot tomorrow. And this is great.
My 14-year-old is ecstatic about next week. So it's when he gets it. I hear you. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.